And we're going to start with the Kansas City Chiefs, defending AFC champions, Super Bowl champions in 2 out of the last 3 seasons. The Chiefs were 15-2 last year, 15-1, while Patrick Mahomes was the starting quarterback. And then, of course, go on to their 3rd straight Super Bowl, getting, kind of waxed in the Super Bowl by the Philadelphia Eagles. Chiefs over-under is 11.5. That's right up there with the Bills, Ravens, best teams in the NFL as far as over-under for this season. From our friends over at FanDuel with the dimmed, nicely showing FanDuel.
Yeah, with
logo.
the well-exposed logo now. Neon sign on the wall.
Not reflecting
Beautiful.
on your head.
Not reflecting.
All right, thoughts on the Chiefs here this season, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird season last year to kind of to get takeaways from because their regular season record was spectacular. On the other hand, people spent the entire regular season waiting for the wheels to fall off. Like, I can't remember exactly what week it was, but I remember distinctly sometime around Christmas maybe, they were playing one of those, ridiculous island games, on a random day during the week. And Ryan Fitzpatrick is on there saying, like, this can't continue. This is ridiculous. The wheels are about to come off. There's no way they can keep winning these games playing the way they're playing. And then they did seem to get it all together in the playoffs, through the postseason, only to subsequently, as you said, get waxed in the Super Bowl spectacularly. So it's difficult to kind of get a true handle on what exactly this team was, even before you get to off-season work and additions and subtractions and all that kind of thing. I think ultimately, though, they've earned the kind of leeway where you say, however you want to characterize it, whether it's like sandbagging the regular season or simply not being that bothered about the regular season, they have shown the ability to get it together for the playoffs, even if it ultimately culminates in getting waxed in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and there's also this idea of, late game magic from Mahomes and late game magic from Spags defensively. Like they've earned that right. Just to remind what happened last year, I used to always describe them way back last year, calibrated to win by 3. No matter what happens, they found a way to win by 3. That included a blocked game-winning field goal from the Denver Broncos, or the Raiders just dropping a snap when they were in field goal range to pull their upset.
Remember,
there was luck involved.
Yeah, remember, some of these wins were not like, they found the answer late in the game. It's like, no, the answer was the other team screwing up somehow in spectacular fashion through no control of yours. Like you just happened to be there while someone else dropped the ball.
But they still, beat the Bills in the AFC Championship. They go to the Super Bowl, and then the Eagles just dominated that entire game.
Yeah.
The big questions for Kansas City the last couple of years, points per game are way down, but they're also, again, this idea of calibrated to this defensive style of football. They just have not been explosive. They have not been a downfield throwing team, which is what they obviously were early in Patrick Mahomes' career. That was supposed to be different last year. They brought in Hollywood Brown as a free agent. They drafted Xavier Worthy in his 4.21 speed. They had Rashee Rice. Well, that didn't work because Hollywood Brown got hurt. Right, Rashee Rice got injured in week 4.
Yeah.
And then Xavier Worthy was not used as that deep threat. All reports coming out of Kansas City, though, hey, we want to be explosive again. We want to get the ball down the field. So that's what I want to start with. The defense, this has been a defense-first type of team, defense and ball control team the last couple of years. It's worked. They've won a lot of games. Can they create more big plays offensively this year with the speed receivers presumably healthy, even though Hollywood's dealing with some training camp injuries at the moment?
Yeah, like it is worth pointing out, the last couple of years, really since sort of trading away Tyreek Hill, like the offense has had to go in a different direction, and it's been worse in the last couple of years. But I don't think that necessarily means there isn't a better version of this offense in there. It's like, if you look at the last couple of years, there's been quite a large amount of, upheaval in the wide receiver room. And 2 years ago, Rashee Rice kind of came out of nowhere and almost rescued the group, Like he emerged as their top target at wide receiver. And that kind of, once they realized that and really lent into it and started feeding him as the number one target, suddenly the offense got itself together. And that was like that sort of coincided with the late run that they made that year, right? Into the playoffs, through the playoffs, Super Bowl. And it's like that got them together. And then last year, it was like, well, on top of that, you've added Marquise Brown and you've added Xavier Worthy. And now, it could be spectacular. But as you said, Marquise Brown goes down, very early and effectively for the year. So we never really got to see what he would look like within that system. Rashee Rice goes down in week 4. That changes everything. Xavier Worthy gets forced into a completely different role than he was supposed to have. And so suddenly, for the entire season, effectively, we were not witnessing what was supposed to be that offense, the way it was designed, the way it was supposed to work with the players in it. Now, injuries happen every year. Who knows what it'll look like this year? But in theory, you're getting Rashee Rice back. Marquise Brown is supposed to be there. You're going to put Xavier Worthy back in a role that he's supposed to be with, from the outset. Theoretically, this is going to be a different offense than it was for the entirety of last year because different players are there, and the players that are holdovers are going to be in different roles.
So there's just a few more question marks, right? There's questions at receiver, and then you throw in the Travis Kelce question mark. Certainly didn't look like himself last year. It doesn't mean he was useless. Like, that guy is still good at getting open, still has a great feel for the game, but there was a lot of plays where he gets open and he just did not make a man miss the way he did in previous years. So you could tell he kind of lost a step. As one who's always hesitant to write older players off, I'll give it, you give it, to me, it's like, let's give it one more year. Was that just an off-season touring with Taylor Swift and he wasn't in the best shape? Like, because if he can, even if he is what he was last year, that's still a useful security blanket for Patrick Mahomes, even if he doesn't have that after-the-catch ability. So a few more question marks at playmaker probably than the Chiefs would like, but there's a ton of potential there, given all the speed and the idea that maybe Kelce could get that step back for one more run at it here.
I mean, the connection that Kelce has with Mahomes and the ability that they each have to read the game, he's never going to be a negative, on the offense. Like, even if he's completely lost the ability to move around simply by understanding where to stand on a given play, he's going to be a useful part of the offense. The question is, has he lost that ability to be a real difference maker and a completely uncoverable part of the offense? And that may be gone at this point. But I think, so you lose that sort of value add. You lose the dominant version of Travis Kelce that you had earlier in his career. It does kind of look like that player may no longer be there. But you've got a guy who's incredibly savvy, who understands how to get open, who can work with Mahomes on broken plays. But now that means that group we talked about before, the receiving core that's a little bit up in the air, Marquise Brown, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, maybe Jalen Royals, the rookie, lower down, like those guys have to pick up that slack that used to be Travis Kelce.
And the even bigger question mark this offseason was the offensive line. Coming off of a Super Bowl where the Eagles didn't blitz, they rushed 4 the entire time, got pressure early and often against Mahomes in this offense, and that's with Joe Thuney, gone, probably the best pass protecting guard in the NFL, forced to play left tackle last year. We know there was a lot of left tackle issues. So Thuney's gone. So you open up a hole at left guard. They brought back Travis Smith at right guard. That was a big question there. But the story is going to be at left tackle, where the last couple of years it's been a revolving door of rookies, just trying rookies and random veterans. It has not been great. But now this offseason, kind of a halfway, decent 2-year deal for Jalen Moore, who was coming off of a good stretch of play for the 49ers. But the bigger story being at pick 32 overall, Josh Simmons, the left tackle out of Ohio State, who a lot of people has as a top 10 left tackle, coming off a patellar injury last year. But he's been full go for camp and looks like he's going to be the starting left tackle, and looks like probably the best pass protecting left tackle they've had since Eric Fisher. He is a rookie still. Yeah. And, rookies have their ups and downs, but that's going to be one of the stories here. Who fills in at left guard? Probably Kingsley Suamataia, Mike Caliendo, those guys battling there. And then rookie Josh Simmons, that left side of the line will still be a question, but I think there's some optimism for the future there. Hey guys, real quick, only 40% of our viewers are actually subscribed, so let's change that. Hit that subscribe button, and now let's get back to the action.
Yeah, there is. I mean, they were tasked with the offensive line this offseason. And it was going to be difficult because they had, players coming up for contract. Like, heading into the offseason, I think a lot of people assumed they were going to lose Travis Smith because his deal was up. They had places they wanted to put the franchise tag. They had money tied up in the offensive line already. And it's like, I don't know if you can give him top of the market money. The way they got around that is they decided, okay, let's trade away Joe Thuney, because his deal is getting towards the end. He's getting up there in age. We can't really afford to keep both of them. And we'll use the Joe Thuney money on Travis Smith. First of all, we'll apply the franchise tag to him. Eventually, they've got him now locked up to a long-term deal. But that's what they decide. Like, let's cash in on the older player. Let's get something now and use that money to keep Travis Smith, who Brandon Thorne, who was on the show last week or the week before, talking about offensive linemen. He's got Trey Smith, I think it's the second or the third best guard in the NFL. Like, he's one of the best young guards in football. Let's use the money on him. And then you've got this, well, what do we do at the tackle spot? And as you said, they went with a kind of hybrid approach. Let's give Jalen Moore, a moderate deal, one that could see him as a starting left tackle. But then let's also find a guy like Josh Simmons in the draft. Whether or not they targeted him or whether they just got kind of lucky that a guy with a major injury like that slipped. And remember, like the Chiefs' medical staff has come up clutch before. I mean, Trey Smith fell to day 3, deep into day 3 because of medical concerns. The Chiefs cleared him and said, nah, this is all much about nothing. And Trey Smith is now, is he the best paid guard in the NFL now? One of the best paid, one of the best guards in football. All because basically the Chiefs medical staff was the one that was willing to say, don't worry about it, take this guy, we're good to go.
Defensively, when we talk about the Chiefs, Spags has done a great job there. Again, they had their issues against the Eagles on both sides of the ball, including the defense. A little bit of turnover there, though, but they still look pretty strong. Chris Jones back as the star. Tershawn Wharton is out, but they still brought back Nick Bolton at linebacker, brought in Christian Fulton at corner. They've done a nice job of building cornerback depth these last couple of years. The defensive line depth has taken a little bit of a hit, but this is where, coming out of the draft, we loved what they did in the draft. Ashton Galati in the third round, Omar Norman-Lott in the second round, disruptive interior defensive linemen. I think they still have that depth. It's just a little bit younger on that defensive line. So I think Spags has been fantastic, really good at closing games out. We've seen that over the years. I'm more curious to see how their style is this year. They just shortened the game a lot last year. Offensively, a really slow 10-play type of style, and then you kind of trust Spags, and he's going to make it work on third down. And I think his last few years as defensive coordinator with the Chiefs, to me, it just is he's making life difficult for the quarterback, just making completions hard to come by, making downfield throws tough to come by, making them into tighter windows. Will they give up some tight window throws? Absolutely, but they're just making the margin for error really small for opposing offenses.
Yeah, it's worth reinforcing that point that we absolutely love their draft class. I think I liked every single player that they drafted this year. They might be the only team that's the case. Like, every single player, you're like, that's a really good draft pick. And honestly, all of them could contribute to this team. Whether like Brashad Smith in the 7th round, running back out of SMU, he could seriously carve himself pretty quickly like a significant role within this offense. I mean, he's got third down back potential. I think he can be more than that as well, given how young he is to the position of running back. He was a former college wide receiver that converted. That's their 7th round pick, and that could end up being a serious part of this offense. Like, the same thing is true with 4th rounder Jalen Royals. The defenders they drafted, whether it's the guys at the top, Omar Norman-Lott in the 2nd round, Ashton Galati of Louisville in the 3rd, and even Jeffrey Bassa, the linebacker. I mean, core special teamer, but there's defensive snaps to be had as well. This is the type of draft class that could be huge for a team, like Kansas City, that's in the Super Bowl basically every year, that's picking at the bottom of the round every single time. If they have a draft class that is as good as it looks on paper, that's going to be massive towards helping this team sort of maintain its spot at the top of the order.
High level, when we look at the Chiefs here, remember a couple of years ago, reset the roster with Tyreek Hill being traded and saying, hey, we're going to get younger. We're going to draft a little bit more. We're going to put more resources into the defense. George Karlaftis was one of those first-rounders that year. He just signed a big deal. Trent McDuffie becoming one of the best young corners in the NFL. We're starting to see, and this is what's been impressive about the Chiefs, is as they were transitioning to a younger roster, they're winning Super Bowls or going to the Super Bowl. So they did not take a step back to take 2 steps forward. I think it's another slight transitional year, right? You have another year of Chris Jones getting a little bit older. George Karlaftis is making the money on the defensive line now. He's getting paid. So I think you're just starting to get younger and younger. And as you mentioned, Josh Simmons stepping in at left tackle, the rest of those rookies having opportunities to contribute. Xavier Worthy, I think, has a chance to really take a big step forward here, especially if they use him vertically a little bit more. So slight transition year, And you're always going to get that, I think, with the Mahomes Chiefs, right? You have to bring in some younger players and bring them along and see if you can continue to win at a high level. 11.5, though.
Yeah. The other thing
in
you're
a pretty
seeing,
good division that we're breaking down here.
the other thing you're seeing, I think, is the power now. It's really kicking in. I mean, every year it gets more and more this way. But you're really seeing the power of how team friendly that Mahomes contract is that they signed him to. That's not to say it's not good for Mahomes as well. I mean, he's going to pocket the better part of $500 million over the course of this deal. But now, a few years into it, I mean, his cap hit this year is like 10% of their cap, which for a guy who is still widely seen as the best quarterback in the NFL, or certainly as good as any quarterback in the NFL, for him to only be taking up 10% of the cap is huge for a team that's trying to maintain, a Super Bowl caliber roster year on year. It gets so hard to do that. You run out of margin for error when you're paying the quarterback big money. But at this point, like Mahomes' quarterback deal is a steal for them, given and gives them so much flexibility.
All right, man, 11.5. Like I said, Chargers, Broncos, Raiders maybe on the upswing. Looks like it's a much better division than it was 2 years ago when the Chiefs were the only team over 500. Where are you going on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go under, which is weird because they might be a better team than they were a year ago, but the division is so much tougher. That all four teams in that division could be good and pretty competitive. So just for that reason alone, you could see all three teams could take a win off Kansas City. Maybe they won't, but all three of them could easily steal a win from the Chiefs just within the division. And then, some regression in the close games from a year ago. Let's go under.
All right, I'll still go over, even though I agree with everything you're saying. I think the rest of the division gets a little bit closer, and yeah, some of the luck probably doesn't go their way, but they'll still find a way to get their wins. I think they've shown they're a malleable team. Malleable team when it comes to finding ways to win these last couple of years.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
Check the Mic is live every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, so be sure to hit this subscribe button so you don't miss a thing.
The all-knowing algorithm is convinced that you'll like these videos as well, and frankly, who are we to argue?